Bitcoin appears to have broken a very historical cycle. Now people are asking the question, are we entering a supercycle? Hi, my name is Dasa, and today I'm going to be talking about whether or not I believe Bitcoin is in a supercycle and how that affects you. This channel will be honestly ADHD driven ramblings in regard to my opinions on cryptocurrency and more specifically Bitcoin and the direction that it is potentially going. If that's something you're into, welcome. Low quality and likely poor editing, but a lot of ADHD driven ramblings. I hope you enjoy. So for starters, I'm just going to jump into the idea that Bitcoin has broken away from the traditional cycle, and to do that, let's talk about what the traditional cycle for Bitcoin is, right? So for starters, the timeline of the traditional cycle for Bitcoin is about 4 years. Every 4 years or so, an event happens for Bitcoin, and it's called the halving. Now, for those of you that are unfamiliar, there are a couple of details that I'll give just so that I can give context for you to be able to keep up and track with me. The halving is essentially a manner of reducing the amount of Bitcoin that enters the market, right? So the way that new Bitcoin is received is through a process called mining. Essentially, a plethora of different supercomputers, or call them what you like, process an algorithm, and once they have solved the equation that the algorithm puts forward, we call that the mining of a block. And once a block has been mined, there is a reward. The reward at the end of that block having been mined is a amount of Bitcoin. Now, the important thing about this is that the halving is essentially a process whereby a built-in mechanism in Bitcoin, every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that you get, or rather the miner gets for having completed this equation, reduces by half. So it gets cut in half, right? And that is going to be a major component of the conversation we're going to have in a second in regard to why people think we may be entering a supercycle. Now, post-halving is the second phase, right? After the halving, there is a bull run, and that happens for a couple of reasons. Some of the main ones being that pre-halving, all of the miners are likely to consolidate any coin that they have collected for the purpose of the bull run, and sell-offs to happen near whatever new top is achieved during that period of time. Additionally, it is a scarcity thing, right? So when the amount of Bitcoin that you can get mined per equation completed is reduced by half, naturally there's going to be an increase in scarcity. Both the mental component, people are like, oh snap, there's going to be less Bitcoin to go around in terms of new Bitcoin entering the market, and in terms of what's going to be readily available in terms of new fluctuating Bitcoin. After the bull run, there is always a stark crash, right? Call that what you like, a small bearish phase, a correction, a crash. But the crash will happen, and after that crash is usually what we call a crypto winter, right? The crypto winter is essentially a consolidation period, right? Bitcoin is going to take some time to consolidate, test some levels of resistance, and find its new median, so to speak, its new kind of middle ground. And after that, it will enter a new bull run, sometimes as large or around as large as the first, and sometimes not. But that is the traditional Bitcoin cycle, right? So gross oversimplification here, halving occurs, and like people are holding on to all their coins, especially miners, and then there is a bull run. Post bull run is a market correction / crash. After the crash, there's a accumulation / consolidation period, and post consolidation period is an additional bull run. Now, that brings up the question, why are people saying that we are in a super cycle now? And honestly, there are a lot of reasons. So we're going to be jumping into what some of those reasons are and why that matters. And if we are in a super cycle, how that's applicable to you. Why does that matter to an investor or a layman, if you're new to Bitcoin, anything like that, and what that's going to look like in the future and going forward, right? So if we are breaking away from the Bitcoin cycle and we're entering a super cycle, if we know what the Bitcoin cycle is, it poses the question, what is a super cycle? So the proposed idea of the super cycle that people think we may be in at present is such that Bitcoin will enter a longer phase of bullishness, a longer bull run than previous, right? As the halving occurred in April. And so now it's like, oh, are we going to continue for longer than before? And the reason people believe that, some of it is macroeconomics and a lot of it is adoption, right? So that adoption is now at an institutional level. We have Bitcoin being included in ETFs, and a lot of, forgive me, I blanked on what I was going to say there. To go back though, like you see Bitcoin getting shifted in the same way that the stock market shifts. For instance, I'm sure you guys have heard the phrase "good afternoon," when that gentleman, the leader of the Fed, walks up to the podium. There's naturally going to be huge market shifts almost every single time, especially in regard to stock. Bitcoin is now following similar trend lines, right? People are questioning, is Bitcoin going to be following some of the same trend lines that traditional markets would, right? If it is being affected by the Fed in the same way that more traditional finance is Bitcoin entering a super cycle where it's going to break away from its traditional, where the halving occurs and there's the cycle that was just described. All that said, I would give my personal opinion, and I'll give it now. I disagree. I don't think we're in a super cycle. I don't think that's the case. I think the correction we're seeing right now, although it's not as stark as normal, because normally we see an 80% of high correction, I think there's still plenty of time for us to come back down to where it would be in the regular, and I think we'll see that. I don't think Bitcoin is in any capacity in a super cycle, although a lot of people fear that it is. Some fear it because it's new forms of volatility that you can't read. It's not the predictable. And some people love it because it's, maybe there's potential for an extended run. We go into 2027 because a lot of people are estimating if we are in a super cycle, that is when the end of it will come. That said, I don't think this is a breaking of the norm. I think that this is calculated volatility. I think this is where it should be. I believe we're at 88 right now. I was looking at a moment ago. And that is down from the high of 126. I think we're in a perfectly regular place. So for those of you that are fearing, for those of you that are scared of new forms of volatility, I think you're okay. See, this is what I meant. ADHD-based ramblings. I would contend the fourth component of people saying that we are entering a super cycle beyond adoption, macro environment, and adjustment to more traditional markets is market maturation, right? So Bitcoin has been around for a while now. And in terms of being in the public eye, we have seen now a multitude of bull runs where it's the top of headlines, and it's no longer the Wild West like it was in 2020 and 2021. And even at that point, Bitcoin had a lot of time to get into the public view in the way that it is now. So with that market maturation, we could step away from the traditional patterns as people begin to involve themselves with it more regularly. It's no longer I want to jump in because I expect a bull run or this, that, or the other, rather just an institutionally adopted fund or form of investment that people are going to be utilizing with more regularity. And while I think that the market has matured and people will adopt more, I don't think that steals away from Bitcoin's traditional cycle, nor do I think it'll lead us into a super cycle. I think that we're on track to maintain current course as if we had never left. Although a lot of people have been talking about it for even the past year, I'd contend we are now going to enter that correction and crash phase that's expected, followed by consolidation and an additional bull run. I don't think Bitcoin is entering a super cycle. All that said, the breakdown and the takeaways for this video should be wise with your money. Don't chase, you're not trying to green. This isn't 2K. Remember that Bitcoin is a long-term investment, that the purpose here is the long-term. For instance, people that got in pre-2020, bull run and all of that sort of thing. Now, if they got in and purchased a full Bitcoin for the 8 to 12 or 15 or 17 that they could purchase at that time, now they're up to 88. And that's in the course of 5 years. The returns on that are incredible. So remember that your purpose in this is not to make obscene amounts of money and to make it as quickly as possible. It's to develop a long-term portfolio, to diversify and build yourself up. All that said, that's my take. Again, this is CryptoDasa. I hope y'all enjoyed my ADHD ramblings in regard to crypto, and y'all have a great night. God bless.